Hey everyone, Mr. Happy here, and welcome to Mondays with Mr. Happy, aka Mr. Happy Mondays, the weekly Q&A show where you ask me questions and I answer them. It's done, it's out, it's here, all the media tour stuff. I skipped Mondays with Mr. Happy last week because I started recording it and I was like ready to pass out in the middle of the recording. Because at that point I think I was done with 19 of the 21 videos I released during the media blitz. And I was just like, you know what? I don't think people are going to really fault me if I decide to hold off for a week and then do Mondays with Mr. Happy with the YouTube comment section a couple weeks later. And so I did that, but I also remember looking at the comments of last Mondays with Mr. Happy, which was 2 weeks ago, and I remember seeing not a lot of questions, or at least not a lot of questions that weren't like really simple stuff that weren't really going to be interesting discussions. I gotta look at it again though, because I'm saying this without really remembering what the comment said, so maybe I'm remembering wrong. But before we go any further, we do have to thank our sponsors over on Patreon, our people who have been helping us through hashtag demonetized. In fact, at least 2 of those videos that were part of the info blitz were flagged as demonetized prior to the actual release of them. I got emails like a day after they came out said your video is now suitable for all advertisers, and I was like, dude, that guy must have had to watch it before I pressed public, which means that guy's seen it already. That guy, now, did I break NDA by letting YouTube guys see that? No, you know what I'm talking. Yeah, I'm just messing around. It happened, but I said that more as a joke. We got to thank our sponsors over at Patreon, though. I got to move through this because I'm still tired today. We got our patrons of Life First, Khuja Cross on Jenova and Kurenai Oni. They've been big-time supporters over on Patreon for a long, long time. They know I appreciate them, and I got to shout them out every video, give them those screenshots on the screen, and say thank you so much, because you guys have been incredible over the last almost year and a half, both of you. Now, we also have a long list of sponsors. We got our standard sponsors. Now, it is the beginning of June. I haven't done any adjustments to this, so if you hear a name that doesn't belong or whatever, that's why, okay? So we have our standard sponsors: Rav Mal of Cactuar, Karen Jairus of Midgard Armor, Jonananon, Alburio, Sana Arashio of Rendil, Crom Gar Holzborgson of Gilgamesh, Kevin Walbatalia, Alma Elma, Dark Lumina from Jenova, Marianne, Ramil Gaming, Sabo Empire, Mizra, Red Wings of the Baron FC from Zalera, Cidus, Oreo, and Shiva, Syd Hellwind of Gilgamesh, Afro Ninja of Malboro, Cheesecake from Leviathan, That Lame Weeb, Ashen Emiya of Cerberus, Fafarian, Rendil, Stevie-Rex, and Neon. We have our elite, did I say State of the Realm sponsor earlier? Mondays with Mr. Happy sponsors. We have our elite Mondays with Mr. Happy sponsors. We got Jay Gardner 99, Benjamin, Irish Rager, George, Batar Garl, Yufu Kenshi on Excalibur, Scumlord, Itsumi Amarillo of Gilgamesh, Ravik, Card Drakens from Fanfrict, Sigurd Drake from Balmung, Edgefair on Ultros, Jerica, Emma, Zernikavor 13, Krista Uzuki, Crazed Meter from Midgar, Raijin Ventinus from Cactuar, Carol, Serafina Edelise, Senshi, Shadowlink on Tonberry, Dom, Asuka Wake from Jenova, Lamilianella of Midgar Armor, Sarah and the Fennel family. I can't get these names out. Janiwa Yatsuyu, Kifka and the Great Eagles on Exodus, Katayoshi from Khujada, Rylanator Westaus The Purple Warrior, Edric Redsteel on Exodus, Lexxie Valentine, Mantaru the Rivivus FC from Zodiark, Sour Cream and Chives from Jenova, Rynoet Chikara, Goisha Valfer of Siren, Phoenix Down FC on Goblin, and Saren from Zodiark. Finally, we have our premium sponsors for Mondays with Mr. Happy: Endless 88, Illuria, Maylene, Noel, Sumbla, Nakunayame, Shana Senpai of Behemoth, Zoshime Hasha of Fanfrit, Beatrice, Kazuzu, Vabatiama of Diablos, Shadow Ari on Brynhilder, Zeravire of Korwhirl, Alchemy, Shinka Casual Heroes FC on Midgard Armor, Tatachitaka on Hyperion, Kana Uzuki from Jenova, Ustarla on Korwhirl, Sathal, Sarah Frost from Behemoth, Holy Tabasco, Crass 015, Serenity FC on Ultros, Kat Kazuma, Ignis Farragon from Excalibur, Valestra of Fanfrit, Not Quarters from Excalibur, Crovus Moonscar, Private Mikey, Nana Kirusami, Rudy Rudiger, Kalak from Roll Jr., Kiltastic Jones. Thank you for your continued support over on Patreon. With that, we are going to answer some questions. Hopefully I remember wrong, and there are actually some pretty good ones here. So let's find out. All right, so luckily it actually looks like people came back and asked a few extra questions from last week. Not too many, but definitely some came back and asked questions after the info blitz. So this first one's been a really hot topic, and that is an intended pun. Hey, I'm Mr. Happy. Any thoughts on the issues of the new machinist rotation? People are concerned about the 1.5 second global cooldown on Heat Blast during Hypercharge plus Wildfire being clipped by using OGCD, Ricochet, and Gauss Round due to Heat Blast generating 3 of each in this window. Meaning that unless you live next door to the server, good luck with that tight window. Think there might be a chance this gets gets changed. I've gotten this discussion a lot. I am going to make a separate discussion video about Machinist and about that rotation and about what has been the, I guess, the perception on it. It's a 100% accurate thing. 1.5 second GCD is as low as the GCD can get in this game, meaning skill speed cannot bring you below that. The problem with a 1.5 second GCD is that it doesn't leave a whole lot of room for anyone with ping or anyone with latency, because it's going to take the half a second activation and then exactly 1 second of total activation time for your OGCD. Any latency is immediately factored into that. So there's literally no room. Now, the easiest way to fix that would, of course, be to change it to even 1.6. 1.6 would give you, 100 ms. 1.75 gives you a reasonable 250. You also have to think about how closely that will fit inside of the timer as well. Because once you get to 1.75, then it's slower for those who do have good latency and fast for those. But I think it's an overall good balance to take with Heat Blast. I definitely, looking at the window, Ricochet and Gauss Round, you can't go into your opening window with those at 3 and 3. Like, you need to be practically on 0 for those to safely make sure you can get through the entire wildfire, and that's just silly, because then you're losing damage on the overheat because you can't properly weave through all those, or you're losing damage on the GCD for Heat Blast. There's all sorts of things, and not to mention one of those OGCDs is guaranteed to be a reassemble clean shot, if you're actually going to be doing the highest amount of potency within the overheat and the wildfire window. So yeah, I think it's a totally valid concern. I personally don't mind it in terms of the way it feels playstyle wise. I never really minded it with rapid fire when I did play Machinist before, but I also wasn't like a hardcore Machinist, so of course it doesn't bother me as much. I think changing Heat Blast to 1.75, and if hold on, let's see, 1.3, so that'd be 3.0, that'd be 5.25, that would be now I'm losing track of things. I shouldn't be trying to do math on an actual video, but then you get the 7 and yeah, so with that, I think that would force you to only get 5 GCDs inside of a wildfire window with a 1.75. So maybe adjust wildfire to be 200 potency a hit, which if it's 5 at 200 potency versus 6 at 150, it'd be a net potency gain, which I think I've also seen people say Machinist overall potencies could definitely use a little bit of a bump based on what was, of course, tentative information. But yeah, maybe to make Heat Blast 1.75, but they'd have to change it from, here's the thing, if they do that, they might just want to make it 2 and then let it be affected by skill speed, because they make it 1.75, it's still going to be affected by skill speed, so you need to factor in for that. There's all sorts of little things that they've kind of created as issues with Heat Blast, but I think if they just extend, the general theme is extend the Heat Blast timer, or extend Wildfire's timer to be 12 seconds and extend it to 1.75. So even if it is affected by skill speed, at least it's a little bit more comfortable of a burst period. That would probably be their best bet. I'd also like to see the automaton has its abilities specifically labeled as weapon skills. They're affected by your skill speed, which is probably the reason why they did it in the first place. It blows my mind that the automaton actually doesn't affect wildfire. I was like, there's no way. What would even be the point? Why would they label them weapon skills? They're doing it because that way they can make pets scale off your stats better. Just make the automaton affect wildfire. Come on. I'm going to zoom in a little bit more for this one because I feel like that wasn't large enough, I guess, of a font. This one was asked 18 hours ago, so I'm going to take it as well. Hello, Sir Happy. For all you have done for the 14 community, I thank you. Long-time lurker and first-time asking. So as a fellow Angelino myself, enjoy a bonus of a free prime rib dinner at Lowry's. I went to Lowry's for the first time like 7 months ago. Loved it. I don't consider myself to be the most useful mentor, but I do my best to help out any sprouts in need of assistance, queue time for dungeon leveling, tips for jobs, crafting some early gear, explaining mechanics, etc. But lately, whenever I run into something that happens to be a mentor crown, they either troll the sprouts or don't let me give tips when the sprouts need them. I've even been kicked from a stone vigil because the other mentor convinced the player I was giving ill advice. For example, I was telling a new summoner to use Fester for single targets, but the other mentor said to use energy drain. Okay. I'm going to answer your question. How do you deal with these type of mentors who don't actually mentor? There's a reason why I don't get a mentor crown. It's not just because I do the YouTube videos and I already answer questions on stream. It's because there's so many people who just want to have the mentor crown for the reasons you just suggested. They either think the crown looks cool, or they specifically want people to assume they have any sort of authority in advice giving. I hate Final Fantasy XIV's mentor system with a burning passion. And especially just, I can't even form words. It makes me so upset when I read things, because I've seen things like this so often before, and it blows my freaking mind. Oh, God. Just, what do you do? I don't know how to give you an answer that doesn't involve, like, toxicity. I don't know how to do it. I'm a happy guy, but I get so angry when I see these type of mentors, because it's just so dumb. It's so dumb. You're gonna make me have a mental breakdown in the middle of the friggin' Monday video. I don't know what to tell you, man. Move on with life and accept the fact that you probably won't run into that person ever again. And if you do, put them on a blacklist so you don't end up in a duty with them. Save yourself the trouble, because there's no way that they are ever going to care. They're never going to get through to an individual like that. You just can't. That's like when you give advice to the new player who just tells you, you don't pay my sub. Hey, you know, man, I see you playing Black Mage, and, you know, I want to give you this advice because there are other people who are not going to be this happened to me, by the way. There's going to be other people who are, like, way ruder about it. But generally to switch forms, you know, you'll go through all your MP, and then you'll cast Blizzard 3 with what little bit of MP you have left. And then when you're done casting, you know, your Blizzard 4, your Blizzard 1, and your Thunder, depending on your level. Then you'll swap back using Fire 3, and you don't just spam Fire 3. You know, you use Fire 1. You know, you try to give a basic explanation, a little bit less words than that, and they either say nothing, do nothing, change nothing, or they tell you to go fuck yourself. And I'm like, all right, I guess I tried. And that's the end. I guess I tried, and you move on. That's all you can do, and then it makes for hilarious stories like this. Okay, next question. At Mr. Happy 1227. Hey, how you doing? Are you quite satisfied with your life? I myself am quite content as well. I see. How are you doing? Are you doing all right? I'm doing all right. You asked me in a different way. Horrible alterations to your catchphrase aside, as a first-time asker, have your bonus of Shadowbringer's relic weapon, not requiring you to quit your job and hope. Hey, you didn't have to quit your job to finish the old ones. In fact, if you quit your job, why would you need the relic weapon? You know, if I'm a Dragoon, I need the Dragoon weapon. That being said, I'm a tank main, specifically warrior, but omni-tank for all intents and purposes. After seeing the changes brought about by Shadowbringers, I saw a lot of tanks lost a lot of their self-sustain. Not their defense buffs, mind, but those are in full force and then some. But Dark Knight looks to have lost a lot of their MP regen, and Warrior in particular has lost basically all of their lifesteal, and I don't think their new Glint ability can replace the amount of HP gained by using 6 Steel Cyclones under Inner Release. This does not affect any tank's ability within Trials and Raids, so at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter. But I personally love to go through and solo farm dungeons from Heaven's Word to get minions, glam, and other items I missed by starting in late 2018. I think that Square Enix is intentionally gimping tank solos for older content, as a 1-3 tank only runs of Coil and EX Primals have been a thing, or do you think it's just a victim of circumstance that they simplified the hotbars across the board? Thanks always, and keep on doing it. So thank you, by the way, for the kind words and for the good laughs at the beginning. I think a little bit of it is they actually saw exactly what you're describing here, and they saw that it was too much. I mean, you see the same thing with Dark Knight. Dark Knight lost, you know, Abyssal Drain spam when they're actually going through, you know, Dark Arts Abyssal Drain with all the MP generation. You know, throw a Quietus out and you get all this insane self-sustain. You know, Warriors, they saw the same thing. Anyone who was actually in Defiance during those points in time were definitely, you know, they would run through and release a Steel Cyclone. It was hilarious. You know, if you had the right tank cooldowns, you'd prefer to Decimate because it was more DPS. But, you know, it was always fun to go through and just hit a few Steel Cyclones and be back at full HP, and you're just like, yeah, look at that. I noticed they shifted a lot of their AoE sustain into single target sustain. You know, Paladin has Clemency, Soul Eater now works with or without Grit, not that it matters because you don't lose damage for using Grit. Warrior still has it on their Path combo, and they also have Equilibrium. And then Gunbreaker has Regen, and they have their Heal plus Shield on Brutal Shell. So it's not that they're trying to get rid of it all. What they don't want is you basically being able to solo heal your way through a dungeon, because honestly, they probably want to leave it to the healer. They seem to want healers to have to use more healing globals. That seems to be an intent of theirs. Whether or not it actually works out that way, we'll see. But you can't do that if your Warrior and Dark Knight can full heal themselves through entire pulls while you just pump out DPS the entire time. It just doesn't work. So I have a feeling it's actually more because of what they want to get out of healers and less about what they want to impact on tanks in particular. I don't know if that explanation makes exact sense, but that's my interpretation of those removal of these mass AoE healing pulls, or I guess, yeah, pulls from the tanks. Alright, on to the next one. Hey, Haps, thanks for the exhaustive previews of Shadowbringer content. Thank you for watching it. So just watch your skill speed video. I have a couple things to say and ask. First, I agree it would be neat if both speed stats were haste, so Paladin, and to a lesser extent Dark Knight and Red Mage, could have their entire kits benefit from a single stat. Now for my question, do you think with the removal of TP that the game might benefit from having some abilities changed to OGCD weapon skills like Imperial Arrow? I mean things like Blasting Zone, Dream Within a Dream, Dragonfire Dive, Spirits Within, Carve and Spit. These abilities have no cost associated and don't interact with any gauges, so they're just every so often I click, and so getting a few more out per fight might make skill speed more viable without making it totally busted, but I don't know. Thoughts? Also, what's your opinion of global cooldowns with independent recasts? My initial thoughts are negative, but because I'd rather have them be OGCD, either ability or weapon skill. But what's your impression from the Media Tour? Do they feel natural, or do you feel like you had to break up your rhythm to use them? I think it was just Gunbreaker that had them, but I still think it's worth asking. Machinist also had them. Drill, Bioblaster, and Air Anchor all function similarly to Gnashing Fang and to Sonic Break. So first I'll answer the first part. It totally could work. You know, if their intent, it depends on what their intent is with skill speed, because that would certainly be a direct buff to skill speed to make it a more viable stat for more jobs. But we can't ignore that skill speed and spell speed, they do have their place amongst the current jobs and the way that they are balanced. You know, it's just the bigger problem for me is more so that crit just starts to completely outscale everything. So it's that's where the really, really tough designations actually come from. Now, as for those individual abilities, you always have to consider how skill speed affects your rotation versus itself. Like, for example, Ninja has Trick Attack every 60 seconds. Now, obviously, skill speed has issues with the ninjutsu cast and clipping, but you also have to consider, you know, what GCD am I going to be on every 60 seconds? And then you'd have to start considering, does this mean that Trick Attack will become available more often in order to compensate? You know, do we have to nerf it because of that? There's a lot of elements to consider, to the point where, while those abilities in a bubble just straight up benefit from having more skill speed, it may not necessarily be best for the overall job's design to do it that way. I think they've been very, very conservative with the number of weapon skills that are functioning differently than the normal ones that are on the global cooldown. You know, Imperial Arrow, you know, the ones we mentioned for Machinist, Gunbreaker. But I feel they should maybe try to experiment a little bit more with it, but just be ready to make adjustments to it either on the fly or not waiting 3 months between patches at the very least. As for the second question, what is your opinion on GCDs with independent recasts? So it was 50-50, because for Gunbreaker it feels fine, because Gnashing Fang is its own combo, essentially. So you get the ammo, your GCD comes around, and then you Gnashing Fang into the actual whole combo, you know, with Wicked Talon and... I shouldn't be trying to name these while I'm in the middle of the video. You know what I'm talking about. The 3-part combo that comes from Gnashing Fang, plus the continuations, you know? It felt normal there, and it feels okay for Sonic Break. It feels okay, only because Sonic Break is kind of designed in such a way that it just benefits from skill speed. You know, that's it. There's really no way around it. And because Gunbreaker only has one 3-part combo for single target, Sonic Break doesn't feel too much out of the way to go do. For Machinist, it's again, this is where it actually becomes 50-50. It doesn't necessarily feel bad. It just feels like another global cooldown to use. But the way you have to track it in your mind is very different, because it's now not just, you know, off global cooldown abilities, they compete for space between your globals. These new abilities that have cooldowns, they're competing for your global, and you have to track them like they were an off global. So it's a very different feeling, I guess, design. And, you know, that can be good. It can be good. But will it be good in the heat of like an actual endgame raid, when you're like, okay, I've got, you know, my Air Anchor coming up, so I can get my battery gauge, so I can activate my automaton, and then, you know, I have to drill every, you know, 20 or so odd seconds based on skill speed, and that's going to generate battery as well. I need to make sure I don't go over. It's very different, because no matter what, you have to factor in an entire global worth of time that it isn't used most of the time. It's just the way you have to track it is very, very strange. I have a feeling it will feel okay to some and not okay to others. I personally felt that they felt okay because I understood what what the design philosophy was behind it. That's not to say other people will like it. I think it'll be okay though, personally. All right, next question. I saw Monk, so I answer. Hey Happy, as a fellow Monk main, what do you think of the removal of TP? Skill speed has always been a worry for Monk and having specific amounts for high-end rating. So I guess my actual question is, do you think skill speed will be a viable stat to invest in for any melee now moving forward with the addition of Shadowbringers? So this kind of goes back to what we were talking about with the other question that we answered, where skill speed is not just a matter of resource consumption. A lot of people look at TP or MP and they go, oh, well, the reason why spell speed was always great on Black Mage is because they have infinite MP. But it's not just that. It's a matter of what actually scales with these abilities and how it affects your rotation. So when we were talking about how, you can have off global cooldowns changed, but it may not mesh with all of your other skills, it definitely plays a little bit differently than that when you think about it in regards to what you're used to doing. Monk's a big one, and Grease Lightning 4 actually has me slightly concerned for the way that our rotation is generally functioned. So, we don't have a Touch of Death anymore. We have Six-Sided Strike, but it's on the global, and it just triggers a global that's twice as long. So it's not really the perfect idea for like a filler weapon skill, for example. So the big thing is Demolish. We're used to applying Demolish every third rotation. And one of the problems with Monk's design with skill speed was always that you end up clipping your Demolish too early. You can clip it outside of a window, you have to clip it or you risk it falling off. So you have to decide to either remove a tick on the front end or remove a tick on the back end. So I guess the question then becomes, and I'm going to leave this to all the people who do the theory crafting and the min-maxing, but does it, with Grease Lightning 4, an extra 5% haste before even considering skill speed, it's almost unavoidable at this point that if you were to do Demolish every third rotation of globals, you'd almost certainly be at risk of clipping it at times. So unless they change the duration of it or they do something slightly different, I'm wondering if that's always going to be okay to clip, and like having that extra clip is fine because of the 5% haste, or if it's found to be more optimal to do another rotation and grab it on the back end. If I had it in front of me right now, I could do it myself, but without feeling it out in combat and feeling that extra 5% haste, and also just being in the middle of a video is not a great time for me to stop and try to do math. But there's that risk, and that could be a problem. I think that a lot of jobs risk potentially seeing issues like that. Dragoon clipping Chaos Thrust early, or Monk with Demolish, and I guess off the top of my head, I have a harder time thinking of the rest because I don't think Samurai would really have any issue with this for whatever reason. Maybe I'm wrong, but I'm not an expert in Samurai, so I guess I shouldn't comment on it. And I don't know about Ninja. Shadowfang also got changed to the second part of a combo again instead of being on the third part. So there's elements that I guess I can't calculate in the middle of this video to give you a proper answer. But I don't think it's as one-dimensional as there's no TP, so skill speed is now way more viable, because there's more elements to it than that. I see Monk again. I answer again. Hey, Mr. Happy. Hello. Love your content and all that you bring to the 14 community. Thank you. I'm finishing leveling my last few jobs at Cap, and I have a hard time to grind through playing Monk. I personally find the job boring compared to others, maybe because I main Astra. I don't know what that impact would have. But I was wondering if you could shed some insight as to why you find the class fun enough to main it. Also, keep growing the beard out. I need to trim it, actually. I got to get an electric trimmer, because it's getting to the point where, right here, it's just a matter of, I got to clean this up. Right here, approximately. But I also just need to trim it down, because it just gets prickly. Monk, I've always enjoyed two things, the pace and the positioning. Those have always been the two biggest things for Monk for me. Early on in the levels of the game, when you're first playing through Rogue, or you're playing through Lancer, not only do they not have their combo finishers at an early enough level, but the amount of interaction in terms of how you use your skills is almost non-existent. Whereas Monk, very early on, they get a three-part combo. They get their Boot Shine, they get their Twin Snakes, their True Strike, their Snap Punch. They get their Demolish by 30, and then by 50 they have Dragon Kick. They have two completed single target rotations. One you're alternating every 3, and then you have 2 buffs that you alternate every other rotation. So there are benefits to it, and I feel like that's still going to be maintained. We were just talking about Monk, and honestly, with the question before, I forgot to mention that skill speed does have another additional synergy with Leaden Fist now for Boot Shine, but that you still have to factor in crit. But that's a whole nother, it's a discussion for the previous question. The fact that not only do I have this like finished rotation that just perfectly loops around at such an early level, but I also have this constant need to move my position, to analyze the boss, understand when the boss turns, when the boss does this, where my position is versus the enemy. I have my AoE tools, I have my single target tools, I have my off globals that, are contributing something fairly reasonable even at the earlier levels, in the 30s and 40s, which is going to change quite soon. But there's enough elements to it early on that it feels far more engaging to me than most other jobs. Way more engaging than the healers from 1 to 50, because those are hilariously easy. Way more engaging than the tanks because, again, as of Stormblood, they don't have much engagement early on. They look to have much better engagement going into the early levels in Shadowbringers with Tank Stance and, you know, access to an AoE combo at a reasonable level for some of them. Sorry, Paladin. Actually, no, I don't remember what level Providence is, because Intervene is 72. I think they're all like around 45-ish for their... I think all the AoEs for like tanks and healers. In fact, I think every job gets an AoE at level 45 now, don't they? Now that I think about it, like an AoE combo extension or... wait, I don't remember all of them, but besides the point. Those are the main reasons why. And then at level 70 with Stormblood, I enjoy Riddle of Fire and Riddle of Wind, actually. I enjoyed the versatility that it's added to the job. We have this really basic rotation that's familiar, all 1 to 70, and then, you know, if you can master this extra rotation, you get a few extra 100 DPS, and there's a degree of mastery there. You know, even if I'm not perfect at it, the fact that it's there is something I appreciate. So it's really all those elements put together, and it looks like we might be losing some of them at the later levels for Monk in Shadowbringers, but I'll still always enjoy those early levels more than most other jobs. It may change a little bit with Shadowbringers, but Monk's positioning and its pace has always been enjoyable to me early on. Here's one that's nothing like any of the other ones. At Mr. Happy, hey Haps, hello. Hopefully you haven't heard this question too much, so here it goes. What has been your favorite lore item in 14, whether it be the story, the linked mythology, and history? Oh man, picking one piece of lore in Final Fantasy 14 that has, I guess, been the most interesting to me. I've actually always found Alleg to be relatively interesting. They overuse it a lot, you know, like they do certain other elements in the story with the, you know, tomestones and coil and constantly finding, oh, what was the explanation for this? Allegans. But I've always enjoyed that, I guess, digging into that history, the Crystal Tower and how it was integrated in the Final Fantasy 14 story, using Alleg and it's in the history of the Allegans, and how now we're going back to the Crystal Tower. So I'm really curious if the Allegans have anything to do with any of the other stuff that's gone on in the recent, you know, 12,000 years since the shards were actually all made, since the source was split into all these different shards. I'm really interested in learning how much of that they discovered and how much of that they've kind of kept secret from us. You know, are there secret pockets of Allegans and other parts of the world that, you know, don't have the same power they did before, but are still ancestors of it, like we've met a few of them up to this point. I find that entire thing super interesting, and I'd like to keep learning about it, just learning about it in more entertaining ways than the way we learned about it with, like, Omega, for example. All right, we got a league question. I saw the word MSI, and I'm like, let me not scroll past this. Hey, Hap, got a question regarding last week's MSI finals for you. With TL getting stomped in the finals, talking about League of Legends, by the way, for anyone who doesn't actually watch League. Were you happy with their performance in the tournament? As a fan of Western League of Legends teams, it was cool to see G2 win, but TL left me with mixed feelings. They were good one day, bad the next. Thanks for your time, and I'm looking forward to your content in upcoming weeks. Thank you. I'm sure you've enjoyed it plenty at this point. I was still pretty happy with MSI overall. I certainly didn't expect them to defeat IG. I don't think that anything about TL's specific, I guess, compositions or their strategy or their team play was in any way superior to IG. They were just better on the day, it felt like. And G2, you know, as soon as GT beat SKT, I actually thought SKT was going to win the whole tournament. But that IG was going to be a big potential second place. I actually didn't think either of the Western teams had a chance of making it through, because I knew, I had faith in SKT. And the fact that G2 and TL managed to even get to the finals was a bit of a shocker to me, because head-to-head, I would put G2 over TL 3-0 pretty much any day, based on, you know, the way that they've performed in recent splits and whatnot. So no, I wasn't in any way surprised. I wish the finals had gone on longer, because I would have just liked a better series of finals. You know, I stayed up for those finals, and I ended up going to sleep after the second match, because I was like, this is obvious. This is too obvious. I don't need to stay up for all three. So yeah, it could have been more entertaining. I think that's the big thing I took away, but I'm overall pretty pleased with the way the West performed. I think Worlds is going to be a completely different story. I don't think we should expect timelines to play out like this. The same there. It's over a much longer period of time. There's way more teams involved. The way the group draws are done, the number of teams from each region, it's going to make things vary a great bit. So I think Worlds is really the big thing. I think MSI is always just, you know, Worlds mini, as much as it's the best team from each region. It really doesn't represent who's going to be the best by the end of the season. So plenty of League of Legends still to watch. All right, so as you guys can note out here, it sounds like I really need to go grab a beverage of some kind, because I'm not really losing my voice, but it's getting hoarser as the video goes on. So it's been a pretty long video thus far, so I'm going to make this the last question. There's actually more questions that I think are good ones. So again, if you didn't get your question asked this week, I apparently misremembered because I've seen plenty of good questions as I've actually scrolled through. So I was completely wrong from last week. Either that or people went back and edited them and made them a lot better, because I see an edit even on this one. So be sure to ask your questions under the video for next week if I didn't answer them this week, because there were actually some pretty good ones. And if you have new ones, of course, ask them under the video as well. So hey, Happy, how you doing? Before question, can I just say thanks for waving back and responding to tells in Final Fantasy XI. Also, as a first-time bonus, have a Rema weapon of your choice. Dude, I still got I got like 5 bosses for my Aeonic and Eska Ruan, and I've got all of Ryzen Jima, and that's my Aeonic Katana, if I'm not mistaken. Blade 10 all the way. So that's the one. I'll take my Kinkonkin being finished though for my Puppet Master. The questions, one serious, one for fun. Okay. So one, looking to get into raiding a bit more this expansion. Any guides or anything you can recommend with advanced tips or tricks you wouldn't pick up in your average guide? Started stockpiling Gillen materia and just a bit lost to how to get prepared. I mean, there's not really these like big secrets. It's just the way you approach encounters when you're seeing them for the first time. You know, you need to think, oh, well, there was nothing around and someone just died to that. Was that like a split damage AoE that we didn't know about? Did somebody need to stand in front of the other person? And then all of a sudden you've got, oh, there's this marker in the back of the room and it just hit the ground and exploded. Did somebody need to stand under that? You know, were we just not far enough away from it? Is it proximity damage? The way you look at an encounter when nobody knows it yet is a really, really big thing. Also, being able to look at an encounter and go, okay, well, that's what we're supposed to do, but how can I do that and output the most amount of DPS, or, you know, save my cooldowns the best for that as a tank, or, you know, spend as few globals healing as possible on a healer? Being able to look at an encounter and divine those things is the most valuable thing in raiding. Yes, eventually, you know, if you've overcome all that, you can start worrying about FF logs and parses. I rarely ever pay much attention to those. I'm someone who just wants to get the win and get the loot at the end of every single raid. So unless I'm like dead bored in a raid, I just don't even focus on my parse really. I just play as safe as humanly possible because I've got shit to go do after raid is done. That's the truth. So those few things definitely help you out. And then for question number 2, will you be maining Monk again this expansion? Sorry if I answered this already. So I think Monk's probably going to get some adjustments going into Shadowbringers, but I'm way more drawn to the ranged physical role this time around. You know, Dancer really, really sings to me as a job that I will like. And despite what we said about Machinist earlier, even if it gets no major changes in regards to the way that it interacts with Overheat and Wildfire, I'm feeling I'll still enjoy it. You know, even if it, you know, clips a GCD here and there, and I need to adjust it so it's like 4 heat blasts and a reassembled clean shot, and no one wants to have to do that, but with latency, you know, maybe it comes down to that. I'd still probably enjoy the job just because I like the way it flows, I like the aesthetic to it, and I'll be honest, it's the closest I'll come to a non-limited Puppet Master in this game ever. And then Bard, I think Bard's fine now, fine to play now. It'll be just as fine to play later. A little bit less RNG going into Shadowbringer. So looking at that entire role, I think I can wrap my head around it a little bit easier while still, you know, trying to be entertaining on stream and trying to, you know, be informative and progress on a raid for the first time. Whereas Melee, I feel like Monk still is the only job I really resonate with. You know, Ninja looks like it's really fucking cool, but I have a feeling that it's still not going to feel right for me, and I could be wrong. Samurai and Dragoon, I never thought they felt really that bad, but I'm not excited about playing them. I never have been, really. That's why I've never gravitated towards those jobs. Monk is really just only ever been the only Melee job that really makes me feel like I'm on top of the world. But the ranged are really given a run for their money, all 3 of them, even with the Machinist stuff we said earlier. So I think I'm going to leave myself open to that entire role of ranged physical, but try to lean towards Dancer, since I'll probably be able to get away with playing Dancer in any content, because people are going to want Dancers fairly frequently, I feel. Even if like Bard or Machinist outputs more DPS, people always want the pad, you know? From Dancer, people always want the pad. So I'm feeling pretty safe about that choice. But anyway, that's going to be the last question I answer for this episode of Monday. Sorry, I would actually like to answer more, but like I said, you can hear how hoarse my voice is getting. I've been talking nonstop for like a week, whether it be on stream, off stream, it doesn't matter. My voice hasn't really gotten a rest. So thank you for watching this episode of Mondays with Mr. Happy. If you have questions, again, be sure to ask in the comment section of the video below, and I'll do my best to get to as many as possible. If yours wasn't answered, try asking it again. Sometimes I can't get to a question just because of time. Sometimes it's just not a great question for me to answer. So you know, I try, but can't be perfect. So thanks everyone for hanging out. I am going to go get some water or something and render this video. But I will see all of you in the next episode of Mondays with Mr. Happy. And until then, take care.